Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today we've gotten breaking news from inside the Russian Federation as we've been able to hear of a significant ammunition blast resulting in the loss of billions of dollars of ammunition for the Russian Federation in a single flash. Meanwhile, inside of the areas of Oryol Oblast and near to the area of Yalets in the Lipetsk Oblast, we've been able to hear that a Russian Mi-8 helicopter has crashed in the middle of the drone attack by the Ukrainian Armed Forces near to the area of Oryol and Lipetsk, and specifically the smaller town of Yelets. We've been able to hear that the Energia battery production factory has also been hit and destroyed by Ukrainian forces as of today. Meanwhile, both sides are conducting a prisoner exchange at the moment, with 1,000 Ukrainian prisoners being released for 1,000 Russian prisoners, as the Russian Federation has now continued to insist that they will be continuing on with their preparations for peace and new demands for peace, although Lavrov is now saying that the Ukrainian government has to hold elections for any peace plan to go forward. Also, while they're talking about peace, we have been able to hear that their new buffer zone offensive is now going to be including the Odessa and Mykolaiv oblasts, as well as the Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv oblasts, pretty much meaning all of western Ukraine. This is also coming as we were able to see a Russian drone attack being conducted once more overnight, with an F-16 visually confirmed to have downed one of the drones during that attack. Outside of the Russian war in Ukraine, we have also been able to hear that Pakistan is possibly considering further strikes against Indian targets here in the near future in their own waves of airstrikes, while the United States of America has now officially condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have a lot of news to cover, at least here in the news video that we're going to be having for all of y'all today. And moving on down into our most significant piece of news, this brings us down to the area around the city of Krasnodar. Krasnodar is a fairly important city for the Russian Federation so far during the war, as Krasnodar has become a major logistics hub for supplies that have been traveling through the Kerch Strait, either in a limited amount over the bridge or a high amount over the railroad ferries, and we've also been able to see that Krasnodar is a significant basing area for the Russian Federation's armed forces that are operating from Russian territory, but still continuing attacks inside of Ukraine. Ukrainian forces were able to successfully hit an ammunition depot around the city of Krasnodar overnight, resulting in an instantaneous massive explosion that occurred. I will be showing you all this right here, reading you all a little bit of the detail that we have so far on these kinds of explosions, but here's the clip.
Да я вижу дорогу! Посмотри на дорогу! Нормально все у нас? Да, здорово, все.
Газуй. Уезжай.
Окна целые у нас?
Да. Уезжай. Это уже снаряды. Это сейчас все пойдет. Может, сейчас направо, прям поедем? Я знаю дороги.
Нет. Не поедем. Все нормально.
Охереть, клип.
One can tell by the mushroom cloud and just the Star Wars-like style explosion that happened at the beginning, almost looking like it's the destruction of the Death Star, that a significant amount of ammunition did explode inside of this facility. And at least from what we've been able to hear, it was a fairly large ammunition depot that did go up. According to what we've been able to hear, from the last three attacks on the last three major arsenals, including the Gral arsenals, which were not hit today, Russia has lost approximately 60,000 tons of missiles and rockets from these kinds of explosions. These explosions are significant and are generally almost lottery-style hits for the Ukrainians to be able to hit, or jackpot hits, hitting a single drone onto a single ammunition site, leading into a chain reaction that destroys pretty much every single rocket or missile at the facility. This facility may have been housing thousands of rockets at the exact same time. At least the sheer size of the explosion, which is really hard to even get it in scale here, but there you can see kind of a closer scale. These trees are about halfway to the actual epicenter of that explosion, meaning that this mushroom cloud is already about a mile high when we're seeing it right here in this part of the video, which means that the explosion had to have been wildly significant for the mushroom cloud to have reached a mile high within about 10 seconds from the initial explosion. Nevertheless, it is showing us that the Ukrainian armed forces are still able to land some incredibly lucky hits throughout the area of the Russian Federation and bring down some of Russia's largest ammunition arsenals, or largest ammunition factories and oil refineries throughout even this period of the conflict, which is very late in the war. We have also been able to hear that near to the area of Yelets inside of the Lipetsk Oblast, that the Ukrainians have struck the Energia plant inside of the area. This facility is used for the production of batteries for drones, missiles, aircraft, and aviation systems, meaning that strikes on this plant is striking a war industries plant and is significantly conducive to the winning of the war effort by the state of Ukraine and continuing to attrit Russian forces and their ability to resupply for losses. When you see the hit on the energy plant right there. And moving into our next clip, we can also see...
Еще один. И давай отсюда съебываем. Сейчас машина.
Ребят, машина. Свет туши, ёпты.
We hear everyone going crazy.
Свет туши.
And we can hear the drone now. It sounds like people might be running.
Туши свет.
Someone's burning rubber and the drone is hit. That was a little wild, that clip right there. It felt like it felt like that picture over there on the side of the Twitter that looks like Putin and Putin, but he's from Broward County where the mountains are made of trash or something like that. But anyways, moving on from the clip, here's another clip of the attack at Yelets.
Их много, наверное. Все, вот пизда.
We see the impact right there and the explosion as well. And finally, in our last clip, we also get to see the ongoing fire on top of the plant after the drone successfully hit. It is showing us that the Ukrainian armed forces are going after strategic military targets, and while the Yelets battery factory isn't exactly a military target sort of a thing, or at least doesn't sound like a military target, it 100% is. Any factories that produce any kind of equipment used inside of a war effort are considered war industry, or the extension of war industry. For this reason, these do classify as actual military targets, as destroying the Energia battery factory, which I believe is this facility right here. It is something that will be producing a beneficial result for the state of Ukraine and denying the Russian Federation the ability to easily wage war with the kind of resources and materials necessary to be able to pull that off. It is also something to note that this wasn't the only thing that happened in the Russian Federation over the night, including the drone attack on Krasnodar and Yelets, that is. We were able to hear that a Russian Mi-8 also crashed in the middle of the day today for really unknown reasons, but we were able to see the burning smoke from the crash of the Mi-8. We were able to confirm that all 3 crew members on board the helicopter were killed, and not only that, we were also able to see the remains of the crash on the ground, confirming it is an Mi-8, and also confirming the complete loss of the helicopter. This is something that we don't really know a lot about. We're actually a little bit confused as to the exact reasons why this helicopter crashed. It crashed right around Narishkino, which is right outside of the city of Oriol itself, and so far, there hasn't been a lot of information, of course, that's been coming out from the Russian Federation, giving us any real idea of why this crash happened. It may have happened from pilot error, mechanical failure, lack of maintenance, it could be literally anything. But one thing that is quite interesting to note is that it was currently, at that moment, not under any active kind of air defense fire because it is simply way too far away from the Ukrainian border for that to be possible. It's 90 miles in, meaning that if Ukraine placed a Patriot missile system on the border, it would have to have been 20 miles close to the border or closer for it to actually been able to fire that Mi-8 and take it down. For that reason, this is an entirely internal Russian matter, and it's some sort of a problem made by the Russians themselves, either through the pilot, the ground maintenance, or just a massive technical failure on the helicopter that led to the crash that killed all 3 crew members. Beyond that, it does appear that the Russian Federation has also not been having that great of a time in other sorts of instances. While they've been conducting a prisoner of war exchange with the Ukrainians today, releasing 1,000 Ukrainians in exchange for 1,000 Russian prisoners, it is getting a little bit clear that the Russians really don't have any real aim at peace. This prisoner exchange is actually a little significant. It's the only thing that actually came out of the Russian-Ukrainian Istanbul talks that happened a little while ago. The Ukrainians went to the Istanbul talks with the idea that they would soon enter a ceasefire with the Russian Federation. Instead, the Russian Federation laid out an insane series of demands, claiming that they now don't want control of just 5 oblasts, including Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. They also wanted control of the Sumy Oblast, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, and Mykolaiv oblasts as well. This means that they pretty much would control the decent majority of Western Ukraine. There actually aren't really many oblasts left. There is the Bielitservka Oblast, the Poltava Oblast, the Dnipro Oblast, and the Kropyvnytsky Oblast that are left. But beyond that, there wouldn't really be much. The reality of it is that if the Ukrainians relented to those kinds of Russian demands, the Russians actually end up controlling all of Western Ukraine, pretty much all the way up to the Dnipro River itself. And that was a demand that was absolutely insane. And while the Ukrainians completely turned down all of the Russian demands, one thing that they did come to an agreement on was to conduct this 1,000 to 1,000 soldier prisoner exchange, which is currently going on today. But while that is going on, the Russians have made it incredibly clear that they're back to their old games of not wanting any kind of a peace at all. They did state that they are ready for peace, and they're ready to start moving on with providing draft documents to Ukraine on ending the war as soon as the prisoner exchange is complete. And that was stated by Lavrov today. But another interesting thing that was stated by Lavrov is that Ukraine must hold elections before the war is over, violating their constitution, but you can see Lavrov making the claim right here.
Очень четко изложил нашу оценку легитимности, степени легитимности Зеленского и его режима. Но он подчеркнул при этом, что мы все равно не отказываемся от контактов с ним и с его администрацией для того, чтобы согласовать устраивающие всех принципы урегулирования. Другое дело, когда дойдет до подписания, вот там вопрос легитимности будет иметь решающее значение, потому что если подпишут те, чья легитимность, ну, мягко говоря, никого уже не убеждает, то сменщики могут поставить под сомнение достигнутую.
There we see it again. Right there at the end, y'all could see it. Wanted to make sure that we got the whole clip out. He said, that's where the question of legitimacy will be crucial, because who's legitimate, well, to put it mildly, no longer convinces anyone signing, then the substitutes can question the agreement reached. Meaning that the Russians will never accept any peace deal that they technically signed with the Ukrainians, because they're going to say that the government that signed it was illegitimate, therefore the treaty is void. But what is very important and interesting to note about that is that this is an old kind of a saying from the Russians. The Russians have been saying this throughout the whole war. Before it was the elections need to be held so we can make sure the government is legitimate, it was that the Ukrainian government wasn't legitimate because it hasn't been legitimate since 2014 during the Revolution of Dignity inside of Ukraine. Or it was something along the lines of the Ukrainian state technically never existed because they're not really Ukrainians, they're Russians. Or there was another one that has delegitimized the state of Ukraine, which is the fact that the state of Ukraine technically never broke away from the Soviet Union legally. This is a fairly new one, and the Soviet Union hasn't actually technically ceased to exist either on a legal framework, so this is more so of an internal domestic matter between two Soviet republics, which is absolutely insane. That's living in La La Land. But another thing that I find interesting is that they're saying that Zelensky and the Ukrainian government has to hold elections in the middle of wartime, which, mind you, does break the Ukrainian constitution, as the Ukrainian constitution does state that they cannot hold any kind of elections during a state of war. But at the same time, they're saying that the validity of Ukrainian's government, or the Ukrainian government, can be questioned, but nobody can question the fact that Putin has pretty much won every single election in Russia since the year 2000 with about a 90% or so majority every single time, and he's only not been president, so that way Medvedev, who's been his vice president the entire time, or largely the prime minister, is able to get into the office for one term at a time, so that way technically Putin isn't violating the two-term maximum law that is on the books in the Russian Federation. Where is the Russians' questioning of that legitimacy? Because nowhere in the world throughout all of democratic history has anyone been popular for as long as Putin has supposedly been popular in Russia. Some of the most prominent, or at least popular figures for their time, for example, Margaret Thatcher in the United Kingdom, eventually ran out their own popularity within the early 90s in the United Kingdom, and eventually got ousted by their own party to replace them with another prime minister. That is just the natural ebb and flow of a democratic institution, is that nobody can be popular forever. That's why here in the United States you'll see that usually the parties flip from one to the other in between presidential elections, or after two terms of one president's over, another one from another party comes in. In Russia, you don't see that. Putin's just been the president for 20 or so years, just 25 years at this point, and has never been ousted. So if we're ever going to question the legitimacy of any government, it seems like the Russian government, not the Ukrainian government, would be the one to be questioned. Because the Ukrainian government has had 2 presidents since 2014, Petro Poroshenko and Volodymyr Zelensky. During that entire time, Putin's only had 1, and that's Putin. So I would say that that seems to me to be proving that the Russian government may be the more illegitimate one of the 2, if the Russians want to go down that road. We have also been able to hear that there has been a significant fire that broke out within the Lyubertsy area of the Russian Federation in Moscow. This was technically at Kotelniki, but I'm calling it the Lyubertsy area because if you look at it, it's pretty much a small industrial zone connected to Lyubertsy, so that's the reason why I called it that. But we can see the fire right here burning quite significantly along this industrial complex. We're once again not really sure if this is any kind of partisan activity, sabotage, or a workplace incident, but the fire was quite significant. We could also see the fire in this clip right here. We can also see someone standing really close to it, because Russians do love fire. It's in their blood to be arsonists. But moving on from those clips and out of the city of Moscow, because we don't really have enough information to actually even speculate on why the fire started or who was the cause of the fire, we are going to be moving on into the state of Ukraine, as we have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation, speaking of that sanitary zone, is now going to include a lot more than before. One thing that's interesting to me is that this is a general in the Russian Federation's armed forces, and for some reason he was making this statement today in front of a banner for the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. That's what that says down there at the bottom, just to bring y'all through the Cyrillic alphabet. The K is a K. It's pretty much communist. This weird-looking pi symbol letter is actually a P. The P is an R, and the O with a line through it is an F. So pretty much what it's saying is the KPRF, the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. But nevertheless, we were able to hear that the buffer zone is now going to cover Odessa, Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Sumy regions. So let's go through the list here and see how many oblasts that's including. So first we have the Odessa Oblast right here. That's one of them. We also have the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, which also includes, well, wait a minute, hang on, the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Well, where in the world is the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast? Why, that's that entire place right there. Look at that, the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. That hasn't been included in Russian demands yet. I didn't even hear about that yesterday. But today they've now added the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast to it as well. They're also demanding Mykolaiv. So right now, the Russians are demanding, on top of everything they already are occupying Ukraine, Odessa, Mykolaiv, and Dnipro. That's quite a large area. You know what? Let me go show y'all how big of an additional area that would be if we were to actually map that out. So here is the top of the Odessa Oblast right here. I'm going to make this very, very crude so that we can just get y'all a You know what? I'm sorry there. Correction really quickly, folks. I actually have to include the Mykolaiv Oblast as well. Let me make sure to include them all. So we have the Odessa Oblast, which that's all of the borders for the Odessa Oblast. And then we move on into Mykolaiv, which is just a small little swath of land just about right here. So let's make sure that we include that as well. Yummers. It's a wonderful small little area. The Russians completely deserve control of this. We all know that. They've worked hard and long for this. So what else are they getting? Let's see. Mykolaiv, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Sumy region. So it appears that they don't want the Kryvyi Rih region. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. I'm sorry. Dnipropetrovsk? Oh yeah, sorry, they want the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and Kryvyi Rih is a part of that, so let's make sure to include that border as well right here, because we don't want the Russians to be lacking on anything that they want. The Russians get everything that they would like to request, and we all know that the Russians could take it quite easily, and I'm being very sarcastic here. But let's see, the Kharkiv Oblast. Oh yeah, the Kharkiv Oblast is included. Let's make sure to include the Kharkiv Oblast, so that way we can make sure to show exactly everything that they want, because we cannot deny a guest even the most ridiculous request here, the Russian Federation. We have to give them everything that they want. Oh, I'm sorry, the Chernihiv Oblast as well. Why, yes, that is on the list, as a matter of fact. So let's make sure to include the Chernihiv Oblast here on the map as well. And let's just see the actual demands that the Russians are making through the buffer zone at this point, or the area that they're claiming that they're going to be taking. So there we go. That's the edge of the Chernihiv Oblast. So let's see what the sanitary zone looks like. So let's label that the sanitary zone. And we're going to color that in Let's see, orange. That ought to be a very festive color. So, that's the area, everything east of the orange line, that the Russian Federation is now claiming they are going to have. So pretty much half of Ukraine, this is including the part that they're occupying right now, that's half of Ukraine. And that's now what the Russians are demanding at this point. That's what the buffer zone, according to Russian General Sobolev in the picture right there, is stating that the Russian Federation is going to take. All of this. It's an absolutely insane kind of a proposition. The Russian Federation can't even really take the city of Pokrovsk, Toretsk, or Chasiv Yar without it taking months and the cost of tens of thousands of men each for each city. And now they're saying that they're not only going to take those cities, they're going to expand out and take Mykolaiv, Odessa, Kryvyi Rih, Zaporizhia, Dnipro, Kharkiv, Plavgrad, Kramatorsk, and Slavyansk, Sumy, and Chernihiv. That is an absolutely insane demand, and that's quite literally by the oblast borders. This is where they're saying they're going to create the buffer zone. So basically put, the Russians aren't looking for peace, once again, because they're saying that they're ready for peace again. They are looking to take over half of Ukraine and turn the other half into a puppet state. We've never actually seen this put out in raw words before. We always heard that the Russians wanted to take half of Ukraine, but we never knew exactly which half. Considering that this quite literally is half of Ukraine, that's actually what the Russian half would look like, and the remainder of it, I suppose, would turn into some sort of a Ukrainian puppet state that's run and managed by the Russian Federation. Beyond that, the claim is absolutely ridiculous. We did the math the other day, and just for them to attempt a capture of the Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv oblasts, going off of the troop density that they have had to require just to take the Pokrovsk Oblast alone, it would require, at a minimum, without including equipment and supplies, and a million additional men to conduct that one offensive alone, and to take the Kharkiv, Sumy, and Chernihiv oblasts at a bare minimum. Much less the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, including the Mykolaiv and Odessa Oblast as well. That is absolutely absurd and would never be successful. And of course, the Russians are going to give it a shot, but they're going to fail miserably, because the Vovchansk offensive was supposed to be a part of a greater sanitary zone that the Russians were going to create along the Ukrainian border, and that never materialized. That's all that's left of it, and it's only about, I think the deepest, about a mile and a half, actually 3 miles deep, which isn't really that big or that successful for that matter. And also, this isn't a sanitary zone. A sanitary zone would only extend a couple of miles into another country's border. This is quite literally an annexation of half of Ukraine. But moving on out of that, we also were able to hear that Russian forces were getting attacked and hit inside of Crimea, which we can see in these clips right here. We see the small arms fire trying to take down more of the incoming drones. And moving on to the next clip, we could also see here another video of the attacks. They're absolutely tweaking as tracers are flying everywhere. We now see this guy firing as well at the drone. And it hit. It doesn't really seem that they're good at the whole air defense part of shooting down the drones, because it looks like both of them hit. So I'm not really thinking they did that good at that job. So, you know, some people might be getting a little write-up today down there because they didn't meet the quota of shooting down enough drones. However, moving on out of the Russian war in Ukraine, we have also been able to hear that the United States of America has officially condemned the Russian Federation for their illegal invasion of Ukraine, as the U.S. has joined other G7 finance ministers in a statement that condemns Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And I quote, "Russia's sovereign assets in our jurisdictions will remain immobilized until Russia ends its aggression and pays for the damage it has caused to Ukraine." And so it appears that the United States of America has now officially joined the combination for the Russian Federation, and this is coming as European leaders are stating that quietly in the background, the President of the United States has been telling them that the Russian Federation does not look at all like they're wanting to pursue any kind of a real path of peace. Outside of that, we were able to hear that Pakistan is preparing for strikes on Indian targets. This is more so of a smaller piece of news today, a preparatory or a could be statement more so than an action statement, information, but the Pakistan army may plan strikes against militants in the Indian territory, according to information that we have right now. This may be a larger part of the Balochistan issue, where we've been able to see that the Balochistan region of Pakistan here in the southwest has attempted to break away and conduct a rebellion against the Pakistani government, which is largely sponsored and supported by the Republic of India. And this may end up being an official response to that, as the escalations in the actual ground war have pretty much dropped off. It appears that both sides are still ready to go at it at any given moment, and we're going to be watching it a little bit carefully to see if and when it kicks off, what kind of an event is going to be transpiring out of it. Is it going to become another border war, or is it going to become a full-on total war, much like we were about to see with the last conflict? Nevertheless, that is all of the news that we have today. I have to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover this news for all of y'all today, and if y'all have enjoyed it greatly, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We would love to have you all here, and if you would like to support us on Patreon, the link is in the description below. We have to thank everyone who is supporting us on Patreon. They make this channel possible and help me and Enforcer Matt to be able to do this as our full-time job. Also, if you made it to this point in the video and you would like to let us know that you have made it here, make sure to put Krasnodar in the comments section below. That's Krasnodar, Krasnodar, Krasnodar. Make sure to put that in the comments section below to let us know that you made it to this point in the video right here at the very end, because we'd be happy to see it, and we'd love to know that people enjoy the video that much. But nevertheless, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all in the next one.